I was just gardening. Dirt under my nails, hair a mess, old tank top soaked with sweat. But when I looked up, he was still standing there, staring. He didn't walk away. And neither did I. My name is Diane Kessler. I turned 49 last October, and the only person who remembered without Facebook was my oldest daughter. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac in Northern Virginia, where lawns are neat, husbands are busy, and the women smile like they're holding their breath. I've been married to Thomas for 24 years. He's a good man. A good provider, as my mother would have said. Works in finance, wears cufflinks, keeps his car cleaner than our marriage. If you asked him, he'd tell you we're comfortable. Like a leather chair that's been sat in too long, where the cushion remembers every weight, every sag. We raised 2 daughters in this house. They're both in college now, and the silence they left behind is louder than I expected. I still find bobby pins in the carpet, dried mascara tubes in drawers, pieces of them tucked into corners. I used to be their world. Now I'm just their emergency contact. My days are small now. I water the plants. I meal prep. I clean the same rooms twice because it fills time. I talk to my sister on the phone more than I should, mostly to complain about things that don't matter. And I garden. God, do I garden. It started as a hobby. Now it's the only place I feel in control. I can prune, I can dig, I can tear something out by the root and make room for something better. It's messy, but it makes sense. Unlike the rest of my life, Thomas doesn't garden. He doesn't even notice when I spend 6 hours redoing the front bed. He walks past the tulips like they're wallpaper. Last week, I asked him if he liked the new climbing roses, and he said, "You always make things look nice." Things. Not me. Not us. Just things. The house next door was empty for almost a year after the Hendersons left. Then, one morning in late March, I looked up from the hydrangeas and saw a truck. Not a moving van. A matte black pickup, dusty, worn, with a dent in the side like it had a story. He was unloading it himself. No movers, no friends. Just him and a pair of faded jeans slung low, t-shirt clinging to his back. He moved like someone used to doing things the hard way. Not lazy, not rushed. Deliberate. His name was Shane. I learned that the next day, when he came to my door holding a misdelivered package. He smiled, but not wide. Just enough to make me wonder what it would look like if it reached his eyes. "Didn't want your tea filters getting wet," he said, handing me the box. Our fingers didn't touch, but they could have. I felt a charge anyway. He wasn't like the other men on the street. He didn't wear golf shirts or loafers. He wore boots, even in the heat. And he didn't wave unless it meant something. The first time I caught him watching me, I was in the front yard, on my knees planting salvia. I felt it before I saw it. That quiet burn at the back of my neck. I turned. He was on his porch, beer in hand, leaning against the post like he was made for it. No smile, no flinch, just watching. I waved. He nodded, slow. And I felt it. That thing I hadn't felt in years. Seen. It became a pattern. Almost a ritual. I'd be outside trimming or watering, and he'd be nearby. Not close enough to intrude. Just close enough to remind me he was there. He'd walk his dog at the same time every morning, pause a beat too long when he passed. He'd mow his lawn shirtless when the sun was high. Not because it was hot. Because he knew I was watching now, too. One Saturday, I was dragging heavy bags of mulch from the driveway. Thomas was supposed to help but left to run a few errands that turned into half the day. Shane appeared like a shadow, quiet and sudden. "Need a hand?" he asked. I started to say no, then looked at the sweat dripping down his neck. Sure. We worked side by side for an hour, barely speaking. Just the sound of shovels and breath. Once, our hands brushed on the wheelbarrow handle. He didn't pull away. Later, I offered him iced tea. We sat on the back steps, close but not touching. "You always do all this alone?" he asked. "Most things," I said before I could stop myself. He looked at me then. Really looked. "That's a damn shame." I laughed nervously. I like the quiet. He didn't smile. Just said, "Some folks mistake being quiet for being content." That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed that sentence over and over. Thomas snored beside me, his back turned. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when I'd stopped feeling seen in my own home. The next week, I wore a sundress to garden. It wasn't new, but it fit right. I tied my hair back with a red ribbon I hadn't worn since my 30s. It wasn't about Shane, I told myself. Then why did I glance at his porch before I stepped outside? He was there. Of course, he was. He didn't whistle, didn't comment, just held my eyes for a beat too long. And then another. It was early evening, heavy with heat and the smell of jasmine. I was digging out a stubborn patch of weeds near the back fence when I heard footsteps behind me. "You missed a spot," Shane said. I looked up. He was holding a cold beer, already open, condensation dripping down the side. He offered it without a word. I hesitated, then took it. Our fingers touched this time. He didn't let go right away. We stood there, two neighbors, two adults, two stories ready to unravel. "You work too hard," he said, eyes scanning me like he meant every word. "I like it dirty," I joked, instantly regretting it. But he didn't laugh. He leaned a little closer. "Yeah?" It wasn't a question. It was a line. I should have stepped back. I should have laughed it off, gone inside, found my husband, and remembered who I was. Instead, I stared at Shane's mouth. Just as he started to lean in, the sliding door behind me opened. "Diane, do you know where the charger is?" Thomas called out, oblivious. I jumped, spilled the beer. Shane caught the bottle before it hit the ground, cool and smooth. "You should go," I whispered. He nodded, but as he turned to walk away, he said over his shoulder, "You don't have to keep pretending, Diane." And just like that, the line was drawn. Not across the garden, but through my marriage. The next morning, I stood in the garden and stared at the place where Shane had handed me that beer. The grass still showed a faint, wet stain from where I'd spilled it. It was already fading, just like excuses do. I could still feel the heat of him near me, the weight of what we hadn't said. My hands trembled a little as I clipped the roses. Not from guilt. Not yet. From something else. A kind of aftershock. Thomas left early for work. He didn't say goodbye. He hadn't kissed me in weeks. The silence between us had become so normal, it didn't even sting anymore. But that morning, I noticed it. I noticed everything. The air felt different. Thicker. Tighter. Shane didn't come outside that day. Or the next. I told myself that was good. That it gave me time to breathe. But the truth was, I kept glancing at his porch like an addict waiting for a fix. I missed being seen. I missed the version of me that came alive under his gaze. It happened a week later. Late evening. Thomas was working late again, though by then, that could mean anything. He stopped explaining himself months ago. I was out back, pretending to deadhead flowers that didn't need it. That's when I heard the creak of Shane's gate. I didn't look up right away, but I felt him. "You planting again?" he asked, voice low, careful. "Just trying to keep something alive," I said. He stepped closer. We were both on the edge of something, like two children playing chicken on a cliff. "You shouldn't be out here alone so much," he said. I turned to him. "I'm not the one who left." His expression changed. Just a flicker. A small storm behind his eyes. "Neither am I," he said. It was the first time I realized he wasn't just watching me. He was seeing something familiar. Loneliness. Hunger. A need for something you can't name but feel in your bones. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell the heat on his skin. Like cut grass and clean sweat. I looked at his mouth. He looked at mine. We crossed a line we couldn't uncross. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. But it felt like we had. I let myself feel wanted. I let him see me. And worse, I saw him too. We talked. For hours. About things that didn't belong to us. Regret. Time. The lies we tell ourselves to survive long marriages. He said, "I used to think staying meant strength. But sometimes, staying just means surrendering." I said nothing. Because what could I say? That I knew exactly what he meant? That I'd surrendered years ago but never noticed until someone reminded me what it felt like to stand? That night, when I went inside, Thomas was already asleep. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and looked at him. Really looked. At the man I promised everything to, and I felt absent. I showered, scrubbed my skin until it stung, but his scent was still on me. Not Shane's, the memory of being near him. It didn't rinse off. It unraveled fast. 3 days later, Thomas came home early. I was in the garden again. Of course I was. Shane was outside too. He nodded at me like always, like we shared a secret we could pretend wasn't dangerous. I didn't notice Thomas watching us from the upstairs window. That night, Thomas was quiet. Not his usual distracted quiet. A sharp, deliberate stillness. He ate his dinner slowly, eyes on his plate. I filled the silence with small talk. He didn't bite. After the dishes, he asked me to sit. "Who is he?" he asked. I blinked. "Who?" "The man next door." My breath caught. "He's just the neighbor." Thomas leaned forward. "You're not 18, Diane. Don't insult me." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He stared at me. Cold. Clear. "I saw the way you look at him. The way he looks at you. You think I don't notice?" "I notice everything." I felt heat rise to my face. Shame? Guilt? No, exposure. The worst kind. Then he said the thing that truly cut. "I can't remember the last time you looked at me like that." I wanted to scream. To say you stopped looking at me first. But I didn't. I sat there still, letting the weight of the moment crush me. He stood, slow and sure. "I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight. I need to think." And then he walked upstairs, packed a bag, and left without another word. I stood in the kitchen, hands gripping the edge of the counter. And then I looked out the window. Shane's porch was empty. It's been 2 days. Thomas hasn't called. Shane hasn't come outside. And me? I've been planting like a woman possessed. Turning over soil, ripping out roots, pretending it all still makes sense. I don't know what comes next. If Thomas will forgive me. If I want him to. But I do know this. The garden doesn't lie. Things grow where you water them. They die where you don't. And this morning, I found a single glove on Shane's side of the fence. I picked it up, held it, and for the first time in years, I didn't know whose story I was in anymore. Final line, he left the ring. I left everything else.